right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're starting the conversation on the state of the nation and talk about matters, politics, and everything in between there. Let me introduce my guest one more time. Professor Tom Ojienda is here, Kisumu Senator, Sante for making time. Dr. Kuro Court, Party Leader, Third Way Alliance, thank you very much. And Dr. James Nikal, Member of Parliament, Senate. Gentlemen, we have a lot to cover, but let's start off with the dailies and see what they're talking about. Varsities in a fine mess is what the Standard is leading with. Playing with our children's future, that's on the Daily Nation. Public universities have been limping from crisis to crisis, from insolvency to student funding crisis said to be discriminatory, and now a strike by its workers over their remuneration. The institution's woes are hitting rock bottom. What must now be done to save the citadels of knowledge? On the other side, junior secondary school, public school students in grade 7 and 8 are bearing the brunt of a chaotic transition in the new CBC system. School fire tragedies, varsity fee changes, wave of pay strikes. Dr. Nikal, are we facing a crisis in the education sector?
We are living in a crisis. You're not facing a crisis. The education is in crisis. You look at everything. If you start at the university at the highest level, now you have the strikes going on across the country. And you see, there's a bit of problem of harmonization. When you improve salaries in other areas of public service, you really must quickly think what the other areas are going to do. If you don't do that, people follow suit. And in any case, in my view, there's general discontent in the country generally. So a small thing like this difference in salaries and hard economic times, people move on. So that is affecting the universities. If you look at the university funding, the new funding system that was brought, in my view, it's failed on a very simple technical thing. The means testing, this proxy means testing. If you don't do it properly, it can't give you the results. And I don't see how you can do a means testing online. Because means testing, you have to take time at least and go and see how they are living. Or if you've developed an instrument, you must actually go and validate it by seeing how it performs. And if you have done it for a year, then you should verify whether this gives you really the results you expect. If you say somebody is poor, is it poor? You have even put the bands with incomes. And I was asking yesterday when the minister came to Parliament, can you really say that your instrument will help you to rate people in these bands of their incomes? If it doesn't, then forget it. It can't work. To me, that is the main issue with the university. The principle is supporting people as they need, funding the university according to the number of students. Those are brilliant principles. They're good. But the means testing instrument, I think that alone has brought a problem. Now you go to JSS. Now, I think next year we are going to, I think, grade 10 when they're going into senior secondary. The arrangements, even now from 8 to 9, well, I can see that a lot of buildings are being done. But it's not only the problems of building, the infrastructure. They're doing classrooms. But if you look at JSS and together with CBC, the competence-based curriculum, to begin with, if you go to the teachers, do you have a clear curriculum of what these competences are, the competence-based? There doesn't seem to be any. There seem to be some. They're getting it from the website and so on. You don't have a document that they say this is it. Now, having said, even if you have a curriculum, then there are what you need to implement the curriculum, teaching materials. Up to now, I'm not sure I'm clear what you need with teaching materials. Now, this competence-based, are you going to have laboratories or are you going to have workshops? As far as I see, that is not clear. Initially, we wanted them to be in primary schools, then in secondary school, then we moved them to primary schools. That has brought a problem. The other one is the human resource, the teachers. We are trying to employ them. So, yes, infrastructure, teaching materials, the curriculum itself, whether you have the labs or you're going to have, is not clear. So that's a mess on itself. So let me just go on. Then you now go on to these fires and so on. Now we are coming out with the guidelines. The guidelines came out when they had the fires. The doors should open from outside. Now you say, oh, teachers, we are going to... There should be an inspectorate in what looks at boarding schools that is working regularly You don't wait until there's a fire. So to me, we are actually in a crisis. Now, even transition. You remember we came with this thing of 100% transition.
Yes.
That time we were up going to Form 4 and then university. Now with JSS, where is the transition point?
Okay.
So everything,
It's a crisis.
Okay, it's a crisis.
What is the solution to all?
So I think Trevor, to be honest with you, it is a betrayal of the independence promise. That when we became independent, we say that we're going to eradicate ignorance, of course, meaning education. Yeah. We're going to educate a nation. You see, one of the biggest investments in any country is actually to educate its people and to link academia and industry. And that's how countries prosper. Now, in the context of Kenya, to be honest with you, it's getting worse and worse by the day. And let me share with you a very simple example. Last 2 weeks, schools were opening, September. You will hear parents call you, please, nitumie tikiti, just fare for the kid to go to school. That time they have not even paid school fees. After a week or two, kids are returned back home. So what we are dealing with here is, we are in a crisis, like Prof. Nikal has ably said it. And I think it's, for me, a testament of the fact that there is failure in government to manage our education system. Mm-hmm. Everything is confused now. I mean, all of us have had the opportunity to teach at the university level, and even to run the councils. I can tell you, I mean, when I was chairman of JKUAT and even a council member, University of Nairobi, we were dealing with basic things. That I'm talking about probably over 10 years ago. Today, things are even worse. We are not investing actually in education, and we are not linking education to production, to industry. And that's how we are actually undermining our own education system. In fact, sometimes back, I mean, good profs here can confirm, Kenya was seen as one of the most educated countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Mm. I don't think we are no longer that country. The education system is totally confused. We don't even know what is what. In fact, today if you ask me about, I don't know, JSS, CBC, personally I'm even unable to explain what is it. Yeah. And when you speak to teachers will even tell you, even as we are confused, there was no training even of teachers for this new education system. Mm-hmm. So we're actually living in a crisis, Trevor. Okay. And I think unless something drastically happens, and probably think we need to go back to the drawing board. Perhaps we should just go back to the old system of education and maybe just it for form. It was more clearer. You knew exactly, what steps you are taking up to the university level. But over and above that, Trevor, education needs to be made free in this country. We can afford it. For example, if we just tamed theft of public money, which they bastardize and call corruption, if we just tame the theft of public money, we can fund education up to university level. Okay, for free. For free.
Prof, is this a mismanagement or a failure by government to manage education appropriately?
Especially Ojenda's government.
Trevor, thank you very much. Let me say this, Trevor, that the crisis that we see, it's simply a demonstration of historical failures of implementation of agreements. Because the crisis that we have at the universities, for instance, and I speak because I am a previous Don. I am a Don. I've taught in the university for many years, and I understand the framework and the expectations of the union, WASU, and KUSU, that deals with workers at the universities. The implementation of the CBA, the Collective Bargaining Agreement, 2021 and now up to 2025, I think had inhered in it certain expectations, and lecturers expect certain outputs and results. And because they see non-implementation of farm agreements, they went into a strike. They gave notice, and I think the notice expired on the 17th, after CS Julius Ongamba, my good classmate and very competent individual, proposed a meeting on the 14th. And the CS indeed intended to resolve the problem so that what lecturers want to see is some assurance of implementation of the CBA. You know that when this happened earlier on, CS Mutua, then Labour CS, also met the unions. I think what we need here is an understanding and a balance between the demands of the union and what government can do to ensure that certain basic things are met, so that we have a framework that will see lecturers go back to the classroom.
So it's a failure on government side.
It is a failure of implementation. But you know, every CBA is implemented with the resources. So when I saw the Secretary General of WASU yesterday say that lecturers want to buy machines, I wondered where this country is heading. We also need to be reasonable so that we don't look at one side. We must balance the interests and desires of lecturers with what we need to give our learners or students in the classroom. We need to also have a public interest. We must also think about those as we teach, the students we teach.
But the reason I'm asking that this is mismanagement,
just about having money in our pockets to buy machines.
Yeah, he may have said that, but also the other thing is, where is the problem when the government simply cannot remit the statutory deductions? It's already been deducted. Where is the problem? Why can't you just say that?
I said the problem is historical. Historical because it does not stem from this administration. It is a historical...
Remittance of statutory deductions happens in real time.
But why can't this administration fix the problem?
Yes, in 2021,
Or do their own.
Kenya Kwanza government was not in power.
True, that's a collective bargaining agreement. But the statutory deductions are made.
Kenya Kwanza government is an extension of Jubilee.
Why did they remit the last month's deductions?
Yes, true. I think there's an obligation to remit deductions. I think that maybe it is also a simmering problem over management, the management style that perhaps was there by those who were running the ministry then. But I think it is important to say that the way out is to negotiate with the WASU and to ensure that we have a framework that balances both so that there's enough time for the ministry to remit all the deductions and comply with the CBA, because the CBA is important in running our institutions. The CBA. But let me just veer off the Universities Act 2011, the law. Dr. Nyikal and Dr. Kuru have spoken to the need for reforms in the education sector. They've talked about the JSS. Of course, Kuru is not aware that JSS teachers will be employed. Now we have a framework where JSS teachers will actually be employed, and some of the concerns that teachers have been raising is that we have a set of teachers who are in limbo. But I think that is going to be resolved within time. But let me mention this, that there is need to relook at this entire framework. This framework, including the funding model. We have a 121-member task force that was appointed with the Excellency of the President to look at that funding, so that, because the concern is about band 4 and 5. And I agree with Dr. Nyikal that band 4 and 5 presented a problematic that threatened to lock out certain needy students, because once you are defined as non-needy, even though you are needy, you will not avail yourself to access funding, and you'll be locked out most unfairly. So students have said that let us stick with band 1, 2, and 3, but let us leave out band 4 and 5. And I think the task force, in line with what the Education Act contends, intends public participation, a framework that consults students, the leadership, and the public will resolve this problem of funding. Because I think we need to have it so that our students, we don't want to see a strike, and Mureithi being, suffering from beatings by the police. Trevor Mureithi, that was a very sad scene.
We'll come to that in just a bit. It's still also on the front room.
But let us have a framework where the minister, CS Ongamba, and I'll speak to him again today. We talk every so often. Is up to the task in resolving this problem. Let him meet with the unions. Let us have a framework, a give and take, where certain bits and pieces of the CBA can immediately be implemented, including the remittances that we talk about.
So we're all agreeing here that the reforms is what is needed?
Yes,
absolutely.
All right. I want us to go into another topic, but I believe we should take a break before that, or should we continue? Winnie, which one should we go on or take a break? All right, let's take a quick break and then we come back. There's still a lot to cover. There's the Adani deal, and then there's also, will this man end impunity? That is Douglas Kanja Kirocho. That's a conversation we're having in just a bit. Professor Gender touched on it a bit. We saw a bit of police brutality. In fact, not a bit, a lot of it. When it comes to Multimedia University, there's a student there who was injured in the process. We also know the acting inspector general right now, Masingeli, has been convicted as we speak, but is yet to face jail time. In fact, that's a conversation that the president also talked about and said that the National Police Service should work together with the judicial system. We'll speak about that in just a bit. Keep your views coming at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. See you in just a bit.
Your agenda. It's so difficult to defend this government.
Very hard.
Huh?
I don't.
No, but right.
Even